Hey everybody, this 5 Watt Live is brought to you, as they all are, with the support of our good friends at TrueFire. More about them on the break in the stream. You know, I've seen a lot of videos in the last year claiming that the guitar market has, specifically the used car guitar market, has crashed. Oh, apocalypse. Actually, one set of videos was called the used guitar apocalypse. I spent 30 years in higher ed admin crunching data to test people's assumptions of student behavior. That experience confirmed for me a long time ago that our feelings about the market are rarely based in fact. And I found that to be true in a lot of the videos that I've watched. Separate from the apocalypse guy, who's Gary's Guitars, and Gary knows what he's talking about because he runs a guitar store. So where do we get the facts? It seemed, where should we get the facts? In this case, it seemed obvious to me. So when I touched base with some folks at Reverb, they connected me with our guest for today. I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes over there, but they did tell me that back when they started, there was 2 guys in the data group, and now there's 12. And what they do is they work at analyzing things, some of the stuff that we're going to share today, but they also look at different ways to improve the buying and selling experience on the platform. I'm sure our guest will sneak some of that in because I count on him to do it. So to say that I have some questions is a bit of an understatement. So after spending an hour talking to Cyril Nigg, our guest, it seemed clear to me that I should have him on the live so you all have a chance to ask him questions as well. We're going to cover what the biggest selling guitars and pedals were last year. We're going to look at some new guitar and pedal price index, which is a very cool thing that they've just built, kind of like the S&P 500. And to the point of to the thumbnail, we're going to talk about, have prices really crashed? Or is that just a really good way to get people to watch videos? And I'm as guilty, I guess, today as any, except I'm going to not bury the lead, and we're going to go to that pretty early in the thumb. I can see Cyril in the green room nodding his head. So get this out of the way, the quick sales blurb. See the descriptions for the link to my new online store for t-shirts, hoodies, hats, etc. Also the link to the Friends of 5 Watt on Patreon. If you want to be in closer touch with me, that's the place to do it. If you've been thinking about starting a YouTube or improving your YouTube channel, think about buying my YouTube Mastery for Musicians course. And the 5 Watt World Barber Electronics Overdrive pedals are available on Reverb, or directly from David if you're an international buyer. David designed a special edition of the Exacta Fuzz for his Jazzmaster video with me, and those are available on Reverb right now as well. Remember, if you have a comment or a question, leave it in the chat with question marks and then a space. I saw Jeff Mackerlane jump in there with his typical Harry Snapper organs, Monty Python quotes. Good to have Jeff and all of the other regulars see him there. I don't have Beve with us today. I didn't put any things in the chat, and he's often working. I do see my old script editor Perry McManus in the chat, so I'm sure he can nuke anybody who gets out of line because he is a registered moderator for me. The music in the intro was John Cordy from a video a few months back featuring a Sterling Cutlass, a really good used guitar. Although I think John got his as I got mine from the guys at Sterling. I'm really surprised at how much I like this. This is a $500 guitar. Actually, Cyril said, what do they go for? I said, well, on Reverb. They're like $420, $425 discounted. And I specifically asked Cordy to tell me if he thought they were very stratty, if they were stratty enough. It's a Strat-ish guitar. It's a takeoff on a design that Leo Fender did. I'll be making a video on Music Man this fall. Okay, let's get Cyril on here. I haven't even jabbered that long. That's good. For me, that's a short lead in anyway. If Cyril, he's unmuted his mic. I see he's ready to go. If I go here, he's in.
Hey, Keith. How you doing?
Hey, Cyril. Thanks for doing this. We had a great conversation the other day. Whenever I have a guest on the show, I try to give people a sense of them as a guitarist, as a musician. We really kind of don't have people on who aren't musicians. So we had a good conversation about guitars and watches. We can go there if the chat requires it. And you said you have one of your guitars there in the background?
I got one here, yeah. You
want to see it? Yeah. We can ask the chat. Do you want to see extra guitars? Yes, we want to see guitars. Yeah, grab it.
All right.
So this is your main telly, right?
This is my main guitar. It's actually a Nash telly.
Okay. Yeah, a T-shaped object.
Yep, T-shaped. It's got the rosewood neck. Unfortunately, it's not full rosewood body, but
we're coming to that. We're coming to that. What kind of pickups does it have?
So it's got the Lawlers. It's got the PAF. I forget.
Low wind Imperial.
Yeah, the Imperial, exactly.
Yeah.
And then one of the vintage.
His specialty there.
Yeah, pickups in the bridge.
Nice. Is that a Fiesta Red?
This is Dakota Red, actually.
Oh,
which is hard to tell, on the video, but it's got the kind of like bowling ball finish. That's what I would describe it. It's kind of matte. And I don't know. I was never really a red guitar guy, but I saw this one and I just loved it.
So you didn't order that? You stumbled across it and grabbed it?
Stumbled across it, yeah.
Okay.
You'll be shocked to learn this, but I found it on Reverb.
I am. I'm completely shocked. Okay, so we're set the guitar down, or you can hold it if you need it like a security blanket. That's totally cool.
That's my.
That's why I have guitars nearby. You feel good, makes you feel okay. As I said, we had a conversation. We got to cover some of this stuff the other day. And I like to do the 5-watt 15. When I started doing this was David Barber's idea to take the Stephen Colbert 15 questions and then modify them to be guitar centric. And so, I did them. The first time I did it was with Tim Pierce on the show. And Tim's such a great guy anyway. He just couldn't stop laughing. He's like, you should have done those first. We had such a good time. So now we do them. First. These are short answer. So there's just quick answers. There's 15 questions and we're going to run through them. First question is best overdrive.
Oh, best overdrive. I'm going to go with the Alcom, Windmiller, which is it's kind of a small pedal. It replicates one of Pete Townsend's kind of, I guess, like preamps that he used. And
well named.
It's just like a great always on pedal. I put it in front of my I've got a Mark I Mesa Boogie, and you just put that on a little bit and dial it in, and it's awesome.
You stumped me. I've never heard of that pedal. That's fantastic.
Great. I'll send you
we'll come back. There we go. What's one guitar or amp that you own that you really should sell?
Ooh, that I should really sell. I would probably sell.
We won't hold you to it. This is a hard
question.
we won't hold you to it. And you have a pretty small collection. We've covered this the other day, but these people don't know.
I've got 10 guitars. The one that I would sell, I've got a Siegel acoustic S6, great guitar. it's kind of my like beater guitar. I
Yeah.
actually usually leave it at my parents' house. So
That's
when I
great.
go visit them in Colorado, I've got something to play, but I'd sell that.
No, you should keep that. Anyway, number 3, scariest gig.
Scariest gig. Probably, probably like one of the first gigs I played when I was in high school. When you've never done it before and you get up on stage and you kind of like don't know what to expect, and you're used to practicing, and you can kind of hear everything, and then you get up there on the stage and all of a sudden it's like everything sounds totally different, and I don't know, you get like a little bit of nerves, and so definitely one of the early gigs when I was in high school. Those ones, sometimes were a train wreck.
Yeah. Jimi Hendrix or Chet Atkins?
Jimi Hendrix.
Have you ever asked someone for their autograph?
Yes. Let me think I've asked a few people, but I've gotten some autographs from like sports stars like John Elway when I was a kid. I grew up in Colorado, so he was like God. And especially in the like early 2000s, late 90s. So I saw him once and got his autograph.
Cool. Let's see. Where do you think guitars go when they die?
I don't know. I mean, I guess they're on a highway to hell.
That's a good answer. Most people said reverb. I thought you were going to go with reverb. Favorite guitar moment in history?
Oh man, favorite guitar moment in history. I'm going to say, I've got to say just like Pete Townsend playing it live at Leeds.
That's amazing. I was actually sitting here after you said Townsend. I'm sitting here going, man, those just banging out the chords to Bob O'Reilly. Yeah.
I mean, and his guitar tone just is so incredible, and the way he plays rhythm and goes into lead. I've got all kinds of debates with friends about who's better guitar player, Jimmy Page or Pete Townsend, Jimi Hendrix or Pete Townsend. So as you can tell, I'm a big Who fan.
A little bit, got that. Favorite guitar case smell?
Old cigarettes.
Least favorite guitar case smell?
Also old cigarettes.
I got to stick with the answer. Practicing scales, is it worth it?
I like to practice scales. Yeah, I think it's like a good warm up. It's kind of like, taking a little jog before you're going to run a race or something. Just kind of get your fingers up and running.
Okay. Flat wound or round wound?
On the bass, I am flat wound all day. On guitar, I like the wound round.
Favorite YouTube channel?
5 Watt World.
Everybody else veers away. So what? There we go. Since we just did this piece of this, you get one song to listen to for the rest of your life. What is it?
I'm going to say Autobahn by Kraftwerk, just because it's a very long and epic song, and I think it's just a very different song than what you kind of typically hear. So
yeah, that's great.
There's a lot of texture there. I could listen to that all day.
Yeah. What guitarist am I thinking of?
Let's see. Pete Townsend.
Yes, that's correct. Your first person ever got it right. You planted the seed and then you got me. So,
all right.
And finally, which song do you wish you'd written?
Oh man. I'm probably going to go back to Autobahn by Kraftwerk, but
really, see, I don't even know this. We're all going to have to go listen to that now.
Or the other one, more of a rock song, is Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks. Just a beautiful song.
Nice. Both things. I people have heard it. Maybe you heard me say it here before. I went through a long kind of jazz coma, and I missed a ton of music. Well, I didn't miss a ton of music. If you're talking about jazz that was recorded between 1946 and 1964, I went deep. But I missed a lot of pop music, and even pop music that I should know for a guy my age. I don't know, and I never learned to play a lot of those songs either, which is a kind of a weird thing. So, all right. So as I said earlier, I don't want to bury the lead too much. And I said to you, if you need to, we have a lot of visuals we're going to go to. We're going to try not to run people down with a slideshow. We'll stay on screen the whole time, and we'll be able to react and stuff. So, Cyril, you have access to all the data. Are used guitar prices crashing?
No, they're not. You know, and maybe that was surprising, but I say that in terms of what we're actually seeing on Reverb. We've got millions of transactions, millions of users, so we have a really great data set to help answer that question. And I think about the kind of the context of the question too of is the used market crashing? I kind of look at two signals or two angles. One, are used sales actually declining? And two, are prices going down, or are prices like real volatile? Mm-hmm. So first, in terms of sales, really over the last 6 months in particular, we've actually seen an upward trend in terms of used gear sales on Reverb. We're seeing more listings published, and that those listings are actually selling faster than they did compared to prior periods. So this really indicates to us that there's good demand, strong demand for used instruments.
Yeah,
and especially for guitars and pedals and amps. And one of the hypotheses that we have is it's kind of simple. Used gear is just a great value. Mm-hmm. So maybe take a little spin on the 5-watt world motto. You can get more gear for your money.
Yeah,
when you buy used.
Yeah, and you said something to me the other day that I think is a great context for this conversation in general. You said there's how many transactions, how many are sold, and how many new listings happen. You said those two numbers are almost the same.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. So just in terms of listings, we get about 7,000 used listings on Reverb every day. So,
every day,
yeah. So that's about 2.5 million items that get listed over a year.
Wow.
And about 60% of those will sell within a week, especially if they're priced well. And often a lot of them will sell within 24 hours. We actually do an article that comes out once a month from our content team, where they'll do like the fastest selling instruments or gear on Reverb, and often it's like 126 seconds or something before it gets nabbed up. So
is it rare stuff, or this stuff is perfectly priced? I mean, as you look at the data, how do you account for that?
It's really a combination. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's just a great deal, someone grabs it. Sometimes it's some pretty rare stuff, like one of the ones that was from last month, from July, was one of the Frantone pedals, and it was one that I had never even heard of before. And it's just one of those things, like there's a bunch of buyers out there who are looking for this thing, and when that rare thing pops up, they jump on it and they'll buy it right away.
Yeah, cool. That's very interesting. And is this the lead over to the people are saying that it's impossible to sell their stuff? Which of the charts kind of talks about this? Is this a good place to talk about your new guitar price index? Does that show it over time, or is it the histograms where we show kind of the things staying kind of level by year?
Yeah, maybe we can actually start with the price index. So I kind of answered. I guess if we go back to the original question, or is the used market crashing? Like I said, there's kind of two ways we look at it: based on the used sales, and then also based on the prices. So actually, what we're seeing is the prices have been pretty stable, particularly again over the last 6 to 12 months. And Keith, as you mentioned, you see all kinds of headlines like we're in the used guitar apocalypse, or the guitar market is upside down. So it's kind of easy to get maybe a little sidetracked by these like eye-catching headlines. And then add on to that, you've always got news about tariffs and inflation and everything else. But when you actually look at the data that we have, it tells a bit of a different story. And so one of the ways that we wanted to do this is create this price index. So I think a lot of people probably know Reverb and know that we have these price guides. So if you look at individual kind of products, you'll see what do these sell for, what do the price trends look like over time. But kind of like the headlines, you can look at individual examples and they might not give you a true sense of what the overall market is doing. So in order to help get a better sense of how prices are moving, we built this price index. And you kind of said it earlier, Keith. It's similar to the S&P 500. So we really want to track what the overall market is doing over time. And we wanted to start it before the pandemic, so we had a good baseline to look at, and then track it really for the last 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. So this, what you're showing right now, is the electric guitar price index, and we actually pulled about 142 models across a bunch of different brands. There's some vintage instruments in there, some newer stuff. So it really kind of like gets a representative sample of, in this case, instruments, just like the S&P gets a representative sample of stocks. And we started it at, just to keep some numbers, at 1,000 in the beginning of 2019. And then we can see kind of relatively how all these prices are moving over time. So if you look at this graph, what you see is, there's some stability really going into Q1 of 2020, right? Pandemic hits, and then, all of a sudden we see, prices start to increase over time. They really peaked for us in 2021 and into 2022. And, if you kind of like think back to that time, there was less, people had more money to spend on things like guitars and watches and, other hobbies where they were at home. And there was also a lot of supply constraints, particularly in the music instrument industry, because, a lot of the chips and other things that were being imported to, create guitars or pedals, was kind of lower priority compared to, say, building a car. So, there was even like a little bit of a catch up that we had to do. So what happened, supply went down and demand was higher. So we saw the prices, really peak around that 2022 period. And then, since then, the prices have come down. But again, if you look at where we've been for the last about 6 to 9 months, there's really been a stabilization of the price. And, if you look at this graph, you can kind of see, this end period actually looks a lot more like the beginning period.
As a stabilization, although the first thing that jumps out of the graph at me is that where they were in 2020, it hasn't gone back there.
No. Yeah. So the overall prices, again, on average are about 20% higher than they were in 2019. So, the prices are elevated compared to where they were. But if you kind of took out some of these like big, peaks and valleys, mm-hmm. You might expect it to get, close to that level naturally. Mm-hmm. Again, this is over a 6-year period. So, if you're just growing at, say, 5% a year, you compound that over a few years, you get up to 20%. So somebody actually in the chat asked if inflation was taken into account in the index, and you're basically saying that prices are going to go up over time anyway. So to get to 20% more than where we were in 2020 over the course of 5 years sort of makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're not accounting for inflation or adjusting for anything like that in this index. We're just, looking at the prices over time. We've got this, collection of models, and then, just essentially like charting it and seeing, what the trends tell us.
Perry, I should have said, we can out him right here. Perry's actually a data scientist in his day job, so we should be very gentle with Perry's questions. But he asked a great question. He says, "Do we have any stratification for this? I'm curious to see how this changes by price level." Perry, we have some pretty colorful graphs for this, so we can look at these. Yes.
Yeah. So this one's a little different. We can look at these too. We actually have a few different ways that we stratify it. For the guitar index, we look at it by different brands. Actually, I don't know, Keith, if you've got the graphic for the brands.
Yeah, I think I can get there. Okay, folks, here we go. This is real technology. I got to see
we can try to do this in real time.
Let me see. Share screen, and then open up the correct page. Good luck to me. Not that one. This one. No, not that one. We're looking for which? We're looking for the index page, right?
Yeah. You want me to?
No, I get it. Yeah. I got it. Yep. I think we kept it. That's the effects pedal one. Should get this to open from here. There, and then make this big on screen. Am I in the right place?
No, let's see.
Okay.
Let me get it over to you. I'll send it right now.
All right.
It's just
this actually we're going to a public page on Reverb, right?
Yeah, so we actually just released this electric guitar index. We did one for the pedal market a few months ago. We released that, and so now this is kind of the updated version for used electric guitars. So what you're showing here is the overall trend that we were looking at a few minutes ago, and then if you scroll down a bit, you can see how we've actually segmented this by brands in this case. So we broke this down really into 5 categories. There's 4 that are represented here, and we'll show one other in a bit, but we looked at it by Gibson, Fender, PRS, and then we grouped a bunch of other brands together. And what you can see is probably no surprise, but the overall trends for the brands, especially Fender and Gibson, are following the overall market. There's times when Gibson's higher and is like generally trending a little bit above Fender, but they're really moving kind of in lockstep for the most part. Mm-hmm. Then if you look at some of the other brands, so this is a mix of things like Dean guitars, and we actually put Squire and Epiphone in the other brands, just to kind of segment out from the core Fender and Gibson, and Music Man guitars. So that just represents kind of like the long tail, and that one's actually done a little bit better in terms of price appreciation. And there's kind of like a little interesting spike that we've seen really in the last like month or 2 months, and a lot of that's been driven by some different artist models, which is kind of interesting, and we can probably talk about that in a bit. Okay. And then PRS has actually been kind of like the most stable. They didn't have the same kind of increase during the pandemic, but it also hasn't fallen as much. Just kind of on like a year over year or period over period basis.
Well, I think their index value is probably suppressed somewhat here by the huge sales in their SE line. It's such a huge part of what they do now. Yeah. The SE guitars have done really well. So these are the brands, and you can see the segments, and people can go on and actually do a little digging themselves. And then we broke it down one more level and looked at the vintage prices versus kind of like the overall index, and that is a little bit below. Oh yeah, there you go. Where?
Just passed it.
I did? This one?
A little bit. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Oh, vintage market. Yep. Great.
Yep. So in this case, the green line represents the vintage market, and yellow is the total market. So what you can see is there's a bigger spike for vintage guitars during the pandemic, and that they've retained their prices, the higher prices, even after even at post-pandemic. So
cool.
We've just seen like more value retention from the vintage guitars.
Yeah. that's a great place for us to break. I got to run my ad. We're at the halfway point already. So let me run my ad for get us out of here. I'm taking up my whole screen with this thing. And as everyone hears me complain about all the different things I have to do on here. We'll go to the TrueFire spot and we'll be right back. I got Cyril to give me some of the highest prices paid for some guitars because I thought they'd be fun for everybody. So we're going to do that next. I always promote lessons over new gear, so TrueFire has been the perfect partner for 5 Watt World. I'm interested in all kinds of music, and by taking advantage of TrueFire's All Access Pass, I can always find something to scratch the itch I have for learning more about guitar. As a viewer of 5 Watt World, you get an exclusive 50% discount on the All Access Pass, or you can take a 35% discount on any of the courses in the catalog by using the dedicated links in the video description. I really enjoy TrueFire, and I'll bet you will too. Sign up using the link in the description to support 5 Watt World and get some great lessons at the same time. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this section of the video. There we go. So let's go back where we were going to start originally. With the questions took us there. I'm not surprised. By the way, everybody, I put the link in the chat for the page that we were just on with Cyril, so you can go in there and muck about it to your heart's content. Perry asked a question again about the size of your team, and we'll come back to that. But I thought for some fun, we should go in and put up some of the Reverb listings that you sent me because I think they are a lot of fun. I asked him for expensive ones, some of the higher prices paid. I'm just going to do these in the order that I've got them in the stack here. So this is a Blackguard that Arlen Roth owns, and we were talking about who Arlen Roth is. I think any guitar player, probably if you're over the age of what, where you remember VHS tapes, that would be probably over the age of 50, 45. Before everything went to DVD. Arlen Roth was the guy who started Hot Licks videos, and Hot Licks was a huge part of a lot of people's early sort of pre-internet learning thing. And he was a famous Telecaster guy. I'm not surprised. He probably has a nice pile of really great Telecasters. This is one of the highest prices sold on Reverb.
Yeah, so this one actually hasn't even sold yet, but it's just
okay.
One of the more expensive Telecasters, Blackguards, that's up there right now.
It's a 53.
Yeah, just an awesome instrument. So,
this one. The next one you got to. You said you got to handle this, right?
This one I did get to handle. So this is just like one of the most incredible guitars I think, at least I've ever personally played. So it's kind of made famous by Mike Bloomfield. He played it when Dylan went electric. He played it on Highway 61 Revisited, so it's like got all this history, just from Mike Bloomfield playing it, and then he sold it to the guitar player from the International Submarine Band, which was Graham Parsons' kind of band before he played in the Byrds, and his name was John. I'm spacing on his last name, but he was a lefty, so he cut the horn out of it, like kind of the.
That second cutaway was actually after he sold the guitar. Yeah,
he added the extra cutaway on there in order to play up the neck as a lefty. So, it's just got this like crazy look, right? You see this Telecaster and it automatically just I don't know, kind of triggers something in you. But what was cool about it is it just feels a little bit different because of that extra cut. And so the weight of the guitar, when you're holding it, feels a little different. The neck was just incredible. But yeah, it was definitely the coolest Tele that I've gotten to play.
Yeah, and if people haven't heard the story before, Robin Ford always says that he bought his blonde rosewood board Tele because of this guitar, because this is the guitar. Because of course, when you see this in the old videos of Woodstock of Newport, it's got this before the second cutaway was added and stuff. So I remember when I saw this kind of come into the market again, I was like, that can't be the guitar. And then you just told the horse story, so that makes sense. So it's great. Yeah. Excellent. This is your favorite, right?
Oh yeah. This is if like I could get any guitar on Reverb, this would probably be the one.
Now is this one of the original three. Supposedly, originally there were three of these built. I think that's the story. And then they did a run of them in '68 or '69. This is one from that run. Is that right?
Yeah, this is one from the run.
Yeah.
But yeah, owned by Waylon Jennings. I'm a huge Waylon Jennings fan.
Okay.
I love these rosewood Telecasters. So it's just again, incredible instrument.
Yeah, if you want to hear great playing on a rosewood telly, when I did the Guitars of Get Back video, I reached out to Tim Pierce and I said, "Hey Tim, you did some playing with this casino that a friend of yours had, a '63 casino. Could I lift that and put it in my video for the Get Back video?" He's like, "Oh, no. And I was like, "Oh, come on." He's like, No, I'll make new music for you for the video." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll write a thing and I'll do it." And he actually, at the time, he said he actually had a rosewood telly when they had just done a new run of them from the guys at Fender. And so if you want to hear a rosewood telly being played by a master, go to my Get Back, Guitars of Get Back, and listen to Tim Pierce play a rosewood telly from the current runs. So they're very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the new ones are chambered, which is a godsend. Lord knows.
Yeah,
so.
They're very heavy. I've played a few of the old ones. And
yeah. I think those are the fun listings. We did guitar price index. Let's do, where do we want to go next?
Yeah, we could talk. Well, we could also talk a little bit about the pedal index. We could talk a little bit around just some of the price trends that we've seen.
Yeah,
with,
let's go there to the pedal index. So that's this. The shape is familiar.
Looks pretty similar, right?
Yeah.
And on the pedal side, I think there's a few interesting things. One, there's kind of this like tale of two cities that's going on, and I think it's happening on the guitar side too. But new prices have increased over the last few months, particularly as manufacturers are just feeling more pressure from the tariffs and inflation. But again, we're seeing just more of that stability when we look at the used prices, and it's really been pretty stable since last summer. And again, we kind of break it down with some of the different brands. We don't have to show it, but most of the pedals have been, or I would say like a lot of your kind of like true blue pedals are following this general trend. One of the examples that I was thinking about was the Blues Driver. I think everyone's got one of these. What we've seen is used prices have been really consistent over the last 6 months, right around $70. If you go back into 2023, 2022, these were selling for $85. So they've come down from there, but $70 isn't too far off of where they were selling pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at new prices, they've actually increased about 10%. So these were $99 for a long time, and now they're $109. So you're really getting more value when you're buying used, particularly for these pedals. And then there's kind of like what we saw in the guitar index. There's some exceptions here, particularly when you get to vintage, and in this case we looked at rare pedals. We had a little bit bigger sample size. We had about 300 pedals that we're tracking the price for. But similar to what we saw on the guitars, the vintage and rare guitars increased in price even more. They were up about 50% compared to pre-pandemic. And then you have come back down. They're roughly 20 to 30% higher. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some examples from this, I think it helps to tell the story. Where look at like a Moger Foger pedal, something like the low pass filter, the Freak Box. 2019, these were selling for like $350. 2022, they were over $700, and now 2025. They're in the $400 to $500 range. So again, still elevated compared to where they were, but not quite as crazy as they were selling for during the pandemic. I don't know. A few other things that we've seen. Electro Harmonics has actually appreciated in terms of the price better than a lot of the other brands as well. So they're kind of like in between the vintage pedals and then kind of the big block of other major brands. And I'm not totally sure why, but I'm curious in the comments too if people have theories on this. But my theory is, electro-harmonics just tends to do more iterations and, discontinue, some of the products over time. So you just think about all the big muff variations or, memory man variations that are out there. And then they'll, like discontinue those products after, a good run. So I think that's
Right.
actually helped their, the used prices, kind of maintain.
When you're tracking these things, Amanda Coombs, one of our regulars here, says, "Any insight on used sales in Canada?" When you're tracking these things, do you typically split them out? Didn't I see you did a chart that was like by state, or how do you guys look at that stuff?
Yeah, we'll look at it. We'll do some stuff by state and by different geographies. This index is actually just purely based on U.S. sales.
Oh, okay. That's good
just
to
because
know.
that's the bulk of the volume, and it also helps because exchange rates change over time, and shipping can be more expensive when you're selling cross border. So this was all built on U.S. data. We've seen a bit of a price increase when it comes to the prices in Canada compared to the U.S. Partially because of like the shipping costs and some of the tariffs to bring items into Canada. But I think the general shape would be pretty similar in terms of the trends.
Yeah. Perry also asked, and we touched on this at the beginning, but I think it's interesting that you do have such a substantial team now. I can't see Perry's question. He's curious to know the composition and sort of the growth history of the data team there, because Perry, as I said, worked in the data field, still works in the data field, data mining field. So you said when you started, and when did you start at Reverb?
Yeah, so I started in 2019, so a little bit after Reverb was acquired by Etsy, actually. And I'll just give you a little background. It was definitely my dream job, as we've been kind of discussing. Like, I've been playing guitar since I was in high school, and buying and selling instruments for probably 25 years. And I think from an early age, I kind of realized the power of buying and selling used instruments. My first electric guitar was a Mexican-made Strat. I saved for a few years, ended up kind of trading that up for an 80s Gibson custom Les Paul, which was like super modified, had 3 pickups in it, weighed 25 pounds. It was a lot of fun to play, but it was a little bit of a beast. And I kind of think of like your phrase around catch and release, like play that guitar, got some good mileage out of it.
That's right. Learn what it is and then let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And that's when I got a Tele, and really since I started playing, when I actually bought the Tele and like had my own, it just was definitely like my number one guitar. So anyways, I studied music in college and went to school in Boulder, Colorado. Then I moved to Chicago to play in a band, and this was long before Reverb existed. So to kind of make ends meet, me and some of the other guys in the band would buy and sell gear. We'd use Craigslist and eBay, and this is kind of like back when it was the Wild West. But anyways, we were in the band playing out a lot. I did have to get a real job. Ended up working for a few different tech companies and market research companies. I started my career on the market research side, and then in 2019, I actually was just kind of serendipitously looking for a new job after the last startup that I worked for was acquired, and it's like the same day that Reverb posted a job to head up the analytics team. So it was, like the clouds parted. And I was like, okay, I need to get this job. And so, I've been here for about 5 years, and over that time, we've grown the team from a few people to, around 10 people. We really work with kind of everyone across Reverb. We're working with like marketing teams, with our product development teams, really helping them to make better decisions around what features to release. We're working closely with finance team and operations. So we could definitely nerd out on a lot of data. But, we're running things like online experiments, tests with our marketing to really figure out like what's the best thing that we can do to help all the sellers on our platform, sell more gear. And, one of the things I think about of, kind of why it's important that our team has also grown is there's so many different buyers and sellers on Reverb. We've got, again, like millions of users. And on the seller side, there's, bigger shops like Alto Music or, Chicago Music Exchange here, or Wildwood Guitars in Broomfield, Colorado. And then you've got people who sell once or twice a year, and essentially like everything in between. And, each of those different, kind of like user types or seller types have different needs and different things that they're trying to achieve. So, the data really helps to inform those decisions. And of course, on the buyer side, it's a similar story where you've got people who are buying, probably more instruments than they should, myself included. And then, you have casual buyers, and, some people are looking for, I don't know, a vintage Soviet synth, and some people are looking for, a PRS SE blue, Silver Sky, right? Mm-hmm. So you got all kinds of things in between, or, a saxophone or a marimba. We saw all that stuff on Reverb. So the data just really helps to inform, the strategy and the decisions that we're making.
We had 2 questions. That's great. That's actually a great sketch. We had 2 questions. One, Jeremy Hutchinson says, ask him if he thinks one person can inflate the price of vintage Les Paul guitars and amps. I don't know if Jeremy's looking to do that or if he wonders if it happened. But we also then had our buddy Keith Dooley is reminding us that I had actually seen Mammoth George's question. He says, what do you track weird anomalies like the price spike on the digital Bad Monkey, which lasted only a couple months? Is that tracked somehow? That kind of relates to when Mammoth George listed it. He was asking if, I think what's been referred to, I don't know if you guys talk about it around the office there, as the JHS effect, where they'll feature a pedal and then you see it, the demand spike.
Yeah. So we've certainly seen this happen a few times. And there's like the JHS effect on, kind of the synth side. Heimbach is another, influencer.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Who, also will like just find more obscure instruments. A lot of times like kind of vintage forgotten about synths, and, do these really cool videos about the history and, what you can do. And, it's not, I don't think any of these guys are trying to, inflate the prices, but, they're just kind of telling the story about oftentimes forgotten instruments, and,
Mm-hmm.
That creates a bit of a spike in demand.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times the supply is, pretty limited. So, when there's more demand, it just increases the prices. There's 2 other examples that come to mind. And it's actually in the article, but the guitar that had the biggest price increase between 2019 and really like 2024 in terms of a percentage change was this Squier Hello Kitty guitar.
Right. You mentioned this the other day. Right.
Yeah. And that was another one where there was a few kind of influencers who, started playing this guitar and, like highlighting it. And all of a sudden there was like kind of a run on these guitars. And so prices went from, they were about $250 in 2019. They were selling for over $1,000 at times, maybe in 2022, 2023. And, they've also come down quite a bit. They're, again, a percentage basis, they're down about 25%. So they're about $750, still much higher than they were, kind of pre-pandemic. But, what's interesting with that one too, is now Fender's created like a new version of this Hello Kitty guitar. They've done a Squier reissue, and then more recently they did like a Fender version of it. So,
oh, did they?
Yeah. So it's kind of cool too to see, when like the used market takes off, and how different manufacturers will respond to that, and create a product. Then it makes it more affordable for everyone as well.
Yeah. Jeremy wants to be clear. He says he was talking about Joe Bonamassa, the Bonamassa effect on vintage Les Pauls, et cetera. The thing about vintage anything, Holger Notzel, is a well-known authority on working on vintage guitars and amps, owns Comet amplifiers. He just said to me, it's a paraphrase of the old thing about land. They're just not making anymore. They're not making any more 61 Telecasters. They're just not making anymore. So there's no question that should just keep going up, and probably would be affected slightly by the economy, et cetera. How much money is free out there? Not surprisingly, Perry is here with another question. He says, is there evidence that buy now, pay later schemes have had an impact on buying patterns? Do you guys track the percentage of sales that use those buying strategies?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's like just a general trend that, most e-commerce companies have options for the buy now, pay later. And, we offer some options on Reverb. It's, not a major part of the business, but, some people will use it. And, I guess I don't know enough about the psychology behind it. If it's helping people afford more, but I think what we really see on Reverb is most people end up selling something in order to fund that next purchase. We run surveys actually all the time, and the number one reason that people sell is to buy their next guitar. So, it's that kind of recycled circular economy. Or as you say, the catch and release. And
yeah, right. Yeah. One of the charts I didn't want to miss while I had you here is this one.
Yeah, so this is kind of an interesting one, and there's two parts to this chart, because one of the questions that's come up is one, is the guitar market dying? Two, is it impossible to sell guitars now? And what we've seen is a little bit of a split when you look at guitars by different price points. So what this one is showing is kind of what I would call mid-level and higher end guitars. And this is, just the orders over time, starting in 2019. And, the orders for these guitars increased and have somewhat plateaued over the last few years. And, there's a little bit of trade-off between, the higher priced guitars that are over $2,500 and kind of in that mid range of $1,000 to $25,000 or $2,500. Sorry. And, so that to me is a good indication that, there's still a lot of demand, especially for these instruments in this price range. If you flip to the one that's orange, I think you showed it briefly earlier. Yeah.
Yep.
So this is guitars that are under $500. And what we've seen there is there was this big spike in demand, particularly in 2020, for closer to entry level guitars, especially if you look at ones that are under $300. And as you can see, that hasn't fully recovered. The trends are closer to where they were 2019, but they certainly aren't selling at the same rate that they were in 2020. And what the evidence kind of indicates to us is that there was a pull forward effect. Right? People who are planning to buy a guitar, say over the next few years, had it on their list of, I want to learn how to play. They decided to buy in 2020 or 2021. And, since then, sales have decreased. But again, it's, I don't think there's a lot of validity to the claims that guitar is dead. No one's buying guitars. No one's playing guitars. Because again, based on the data that we see, guitars are live and well.
Still doing well. I wanted to go, I think we'll probably have to go to the share screen again and go to a tab to look at what currently is the most popular guitars selling. Wasn't that in a chart that's on a page here? Let's see.
Yeah, we've got that in. We've got a few lists that we publish on some of the best sellers. So this is kind of a fun one too. At the end of every year, we'll do the best sellers of kind of the prior year, and we'll do this different roundup, and then kind of more dynamically, we have this page that you're showing, which are the best sellers over the last 90 days. And when you look at the guitars, it's actually pretty similar between those what was really popular in 2024, and what we're seeing in terms of the top sellers now. Probably no surprise to most people. It's player series Telecasters, some of the American professional, Strats and Tellies. We've got the SC Silver Sky on there. Some different Les Paul variations. I think that maybe the two coolest or like the two most interesting ones, I think they as you go a little bit further down, the Les Paul Studio, the ones from the 90s and early 2000s.
I got to get down there.
Yeah. Forget what number it is, but
17. Here we are.
Yeah, there you go. But that's just like a cool one. It's a great value. Not all the bells and whistles of kind of like the standard Les Paul models, but it's really good value for the money. And then the other one that is pretty cool, I think it's a little further down too, are the JV modified Strats. So those are the made in Japan, Strats, and we've got one. Yeah, there you go. That's that's actually the reissue, and then we also have the JV mod. But anyways, they're just like cool instruments. They're things that you don't see maybe quite as often, but they've gained popularity on Reverb.
Yeah, very cool. All right, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Time flies. Jerome asks, are there common scams to avoid on Reverb? Is there things that you see, frequently?
Yeah, this is one of the things that we take really seriously, is making sure that Reverb's a trusted place to buy and sell. So we've got a whole trust and safety team who's moderating listings and user behavior and making sure that the bad actors are caught quickly. But probably the one thing I would say is, if something is too good to be true, it probably is. Someone might have even said that in the comments.
Harry, yeah.
But yeah, that's usually the main thing that I'll look out for. But I think the team's done a really good job of ensuring that Reverb is a safe place to transact.
Yeah. Well, and Carol Shields is a regular here, says not making them anymore. There are way more 427 vets on the street than GM ever made. And then Perry immediately comes back with the same thing with Bursts and odd Stratocaster, old Stratocasters. And that's the old joke that they, built 1,720 Bursts and there was only 3,000 left. So that's the thing. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Somebody contacted me recently and they were talking about putting together a broader index of, I think, famous year guitars. There's an online index of trying to catalog where all the bursts are, all those 1,720 guitars, and some of those obviously aren't don't exist anymore. They've been destroyed. But I've never seen a list, for example, of where the 17. I was just looking at doing some research of the highest price guitar sales in the last 5 years, or what are the highest prices paid so far. And one of them was a 58 Explorer, which they were only built 19 Explorers in 1958. So it's not that it was owned by anybody famous. It's just an extraordinarily rare guitar. And they don't even, I've talked to the guys at Gibson in the custom shop, and they don't even believe that all of those 19 guitars can be accounted for, of course. And then we're back to, copies, etc. So, I think that both of those are things to keep in mind when you're seeing things, and I guess it's in the category of too good to be true, right? Yeah. So what's the most fun statistic you've come across? I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. What's the most fun statistic you've come across, like in the last year, that just really surprised you or delighted you?
I think maybe a few of them that I've already said, but one, just like the amount of gear that's listed on Reverb. When you think about like 7,000 listings every day, that's a lot of guitars.
Yeah, and that really got my attention. Yeah.
That was one of the things when I joined. I guess I just never really realized it, because when you're, like searching for things or you set up your feed, you tend to kind of like narrow your focus on, things you're looking for. And it's like a little hard to get a sense of how much stuff is really moving. In part because there's a lot of stuff that you probably don't even see.
Right.
So, that's just one thing that I guess I've like really honed in on. And I don't know, like the insider tip side of me is it's like really helpful to set up, feeds and save searches so
Yep.
that you can see those things when they
Mm-hmm.
come up, because, a lot of the most interesting instruments ends up selling really quickly. So, and kind of the other part of that stat, like I said, is, just how quickly things are moving and selling on Reverb. So, if you're looking for something that's maybe a little more unusual, or you want to get a deal, you definitely got to move quickly.
There you go. Good. Excellent advice. Great summing up. I want to thank Cyril for being here. I want to thank TrueFire for our sponsorship today. By using the link in the description, you can get TrueFire at a 50% discount. As a watcher of 5 Watt World, the All Access Pass is 50% off. I think we had fun. We're going to maybe have Cyril come back every 6 months or so and kind of talk about what's happened that's been fun in the reverb sphere, if there is such a word as that. So does that sound like a possibility?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Okay. All right. Thanks to everybody for being here. I'm going to run the intro to get us out, and I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. I have a very exciting guest coming in 2 weeks. I'm going to confirm, and then I'll put up a thumb to tell everybody that it's coming. So thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.